Head coach Teresa Weatherspoon talked about how intense the Chicago Sky practices have been since they returned from the break. We're going to talk about why that's important to get them ready for the second half of this season. Plus, we're going to continue our player evaluations. We're going to actually close them out today, talking about Lindsay Allen, Diamon DeShields, and Brianna Turner. We're going to get into all that plus more right after this.
Welcome to Chicago Sky Central, and here's your host, Haize.
What's going on, Sky fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Sky Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Sky related. I'm the host, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chicago Sky Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today. I want to start this off before we get into the player grades, which will be closing out our player grades today. I know you guys are saying, wait a second, these are only going to be 9 players. There are 12 players on the WNBA roster. Why aren't we covering more? Well, that's because the other 3 players on the roster are Elizabeth Williams, who's out for the remainder of the season, and then 2 new players that we just acquired in trade that haven't even suited up for the Chicago Sky yet. So I'm not going to grade those players. But in the next episode, we will be grading Teresa Weatherspoon's job so far as the head coach of the Chicago Sky, so be on the lookout for that. But we do have word now from the coach, Teresa Weatherspoon, and how the practices have gone so far for the Chicago Sky since they returned from the All-Star break, which they're still in the Olympic break, but we know how that ends up shaking out. And Teresa Weatherspoon seems really, really confident over the practices they're having, saying this: our last 3 practices have been absolutely enthusiastic. The energy, the effort, the attention to detail has been everything we as a staff have been looking for. Our team went and did some things over the break, kept themselves conditioned, and brought the energy back to here to build momentum down the stretch of the season. And I know those are words, and I know every head coach is probably going to say that their team has had good practice. If you're a head coach and you feel your team has had bad practices, that comes back on you, right? We'll get into that when we grade Teresa Weatherspoon, but ultimately, I like what we've heard. Rachel Banham really understanding that her three-point shooting is going to be hugely needed for this team. And while she's never been a large volume three-point shooter, and I'll be honest with you, I don't have much hope of Rachel Banham all of a sudden hugely changing the shot profile of the Chicago Sky. I've just, at 31 years old, she's been a veteran. She's never really been a volume three-point shooter, even though she's always shot it at a really good percentage over the course of her career. I want her to come in and be effective, but I don't necessarily expect her to drastically change the spacing for the Chicago Sky. But I would love to be wrong on that. This is a player who averages 37 three-point shooting percentage over her WNBA career, right? And that spans all the way since 2016. She's 8 years into her WNBA career, and she's the lowest she's ever shot it was 32%. That was in her second and fourth seasons in the league. But other than that, it's been 39, close to 40% every time. So far this season for the Connecticut Sun, she's been shooting the ball 37% overall from the field, but 36% from three-point range, taking 3.5 per game. So what I'm seeing, what that comes down to, she's a solid three-point shooter over her WNBA career. The Sky needs so much spacing, so much three-point shooting that let's hope that she can bring it, because there are going to be some open looks for her there, and we'll see what Rachel Banham can bring, as well as Elizabeth Williams as well was getting up free throws at practice. So is Elizabeth Williams maybe going to return by the end of the season? That's something that initially the outlook didn't look positive on, but you see her in practice. She's engaged in practice. She's getting shots up. Maybe the Sky are hoping that she can return before the end of the season, which I think would be really good for her to get some of those reps in, and for the Sky, if the Sky do make the playoffs, which we're trying to do, you have a player like Elizabeth Williams who can come in and be that veteran, that calming factor for the Chicago Sky. If Elizabeth Williams comes back this season, there is a high probability that the Chicago Sky front court rotation is going to be among some of the best in the WNBA when you look at Camilla, Angel, Isabel Harrison, and Elizabeth Williams. That is a great potential for women rotation when you look at it. It's just, is it? And I don't want to put too much pressure on Elizabeth Williams either to return back from injury and be really good when it comes down to that. We'll end up seeing, more than likely, her season's over. I want to be clear here. They announced it as a season-ending surgery, but for the future of it, even if Elizabeth Williams can't come back in the playoffs or at the end of the season, just to see what she can bring, I think will be something there. Mariah Jefferson's in there as well. We know that she has not been cleared yet, to return to WNBA, but Mariah Jefferson is another player who's out there practicing, getting shots up. So we'll see what the future holds for her as far as getting cleared for injury. But this is a big remainder of the season for the Chicago Sky. You moved off of Marina Mabrey, right? And you now brought in two players that, both guards that maybe can help kind of, extend the Chicago Sky's offense. And when you talk about the execution, right? And the one thing that I was hopeful that the Chicago Sky coaching staff would do is use this extended break to really do some things for this team, change some things. So to hear that the execution, they've added some wrinkles into that offense. This should be an offense that I'm not expecting it to change drastically with only having a month off, but it does give them an opportunity to really kind of work out some of the kinks that they have done and find a way to integrate new players, right? If this would have happened in any other season, we're talking about a week off before then Rachel Banham and Mariah Jefferson got to be integrated right in live games. You've now gotten a month to get them the playbook, to understand the terminology, and also now a couple of weeks of practices before we return to playing basketball that affords them another opportunity to really kind of acclimate better to their teammates without having to do it on the fly. So, let's hope that the Sky can. They're right now seated at the 8th seed in the WNBA, and this is going to be a competitive second half of the season for the last couple of playoff spots in the WNBA, at least I feel. Yes, the Dallas Wings have not been good this season. I want to be clear there. But they do have, Satu's coming back. They have an MVP candidate there as well, and Enrique. And if those things all kind of come together for this team, you're talking about a team that really the sky's the limit for them. So with Satu as well, Satu killing it over in the Olympic play. She's going to come back and be hungry. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Dallas Wings team goes on a considerable run here to end the season, in my personal opinion. But then even outside of that, you got the Atlanta Dream, right, who sit there 3 games below the Chicago Sky as well. The Sparks, the Mystics, and the Dallas Wings. Those are the 4 teams right now out of playoff contention, and we'll see if they can get back in that. Now, with that said, on this episode, we are going to be reviewing players today, and I want to get into the first player that we're going to talk about, and that is Lindsay Allen. Lindsay Allen is a player that, looking at her stats, you're going to ask yourself, why is she starting on this team? Because if you just kind of look at the box score stats, they don't scream out to you. She averages 21 minutes per game, averaging 5 points per game, 1.4 rebounds, only 3.3 assists, and she's doing that shooting the ball 46% from the field, which is really good efficiency, but 27% from three-point range. But when you get into the advanced analytics of it, you see why. The Chicago Sky's offense, whether you look at it as it's a knock on how bad the point guard play was, or she's actually having a positive impact, when she's out on the court, the Chicago Sky are per 100% possessions 12 points better. They have a 12-point better offensive rating with Lindsay Allen on that basketball court, as well as our assist numbers are better, our true rebounding percentage is better as well, our block percentage is much better, our steal percentage is much better, and also our defensive rating is much better, all with Lindsay Allen on the basketball court. And that is why, you're not always gonna be able to tell a player's impact based off the box score. Now, I will say this, advanced analytics as well can be a little misleading, right? But the truth is somewhere in the middle, and Lindsay Allen provides a positive impact for the Chicago Sky. That, to me, is the most important thing here. She is positively impacting the way that the Sky play because she's a veteran who understands her role and what she needs to do. She doesn't need a whole lot of shots to be effective. She doesn't need that to stay engaged. She's very much so willing and able to get other players involved in the game as well. And as I've said before, Lindsay Allen, when you look at the Chicago Sky, our most impactful lineups all involve Lindsay Allen in it, period. Our positive lineups all have Lindsay Allen in it, and I think that's something to be said there. And so that's a big reason why Lindsay Allen is getting the minutes that she's getting. I don't necessarily see her losing her starting point guard role unless somebody comes in and really plays much better, which at that point you can't be mad at if that ends up being the case. And so when you're coming down to grading Lindsay Allen, right, and I say all that to quantify what I'm about to grade her. Lindsay Allen's a solid C+ for me. I can't give her a B because she hasn't really, to me, B's and A's are for her kind of exceed expectations. But Lindsay Allen, Steve-O did a great job identifying probably about 6 games into this that the Sky should probably go to Lindsay Allen being their starting point guard. And while at that time I looked at it and I was like, I don't know if I feel the exact same way as you do on that, Steve-O, but let's see what she can bring. Eventually, when I looked and did that initial video earlier in the season where I looked at some of the Sky's total lineups on which was giving them the best, things like that. Lindsay Allen, once I saw Lindsay Allen was in every one of the Sky's positive lineups at that point in time, to me, it screamed that, yeah, we got to double down on this. We got to see how this is going to work out for the Sky. And overall, I think that the offense has been better. It's not perfect still. We still need to run more actions for our bigs. We need to do a better job at identifying when we have our bigs open as well. All those things still need to hold true, and we still got to get better at that. But when you look at the positive rotations that we have, every one of them involve Lindsay Allen, whether she's playing the 1 or the 2. Everyone, every other lineup that does not have Lindsay Allen in it has a negative plus-minus when they're on the court. And I think there is something to be said in that. So solid C+ from Lindsay Allen for me. Like I said, the B's and the A's are kind of hard to get. You only can really get that via you exceeding what your expectations were. But Lindsay Allen's definitely having a big impact for the Chicago Sky. The next player that I want to do the review on, and that is Diamon DeShields. And this is a disappointing one for me. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I held this off to the last episode because it sucks. Like, keep in mind, I'm not a new Sky fan. That's not a shot at anybody who is a new Sky fan. That's just to say I've been around and watched the Chicago Sky team for about a decade, right? And Diamon DeShields was a player that I think everybody who's been a fan of the Sky that long has an affinity for Diamon DeShields because we know her story, right? We not just know it, we got to see her story. The thing that she had to go through, the injury, the way she fought back just to get back to the game that she loves and eventually gets there and gets to win a title and is a big part in that. Diamon DeShields was an absolute dog over the course of her WNBA career. And the one season she left the Chicago Sky, it sucked to see her go. I'm not even going to lie to you. After we won that championship, it sucked to see Diamon DeShields go because of watching how and the way she fought back, right? This is a player that over the course of her WNBA career averages 12 points per game and does that on almost 40% shooting. And we needed Diamon DeShields. When Diamon DeShields was named as one of the starters in this team and in this lineup to start the season, I thought it was going to be a really good balance. I thought she was going to give that dog mentality on both sides of the ball. And while at times she has given that, in very small spurts, she has. We've seen the games where she scored in double digits. It's been a few, not a lot, right, over the course of the season. But overall, it's just like you see a little bit of that. To start the season, Diamon DeShields scored 14 points and 16 points in the Chicago Sky's first 2 games of the season. And she hasn't scored in double digits since then. She hasn't scored since then, since the first game of the season. Now, she's flirted with it. She had some 9-point games, some 8-point games, things like that. But she hasn't scored in double digits since the first 2 games of the season. And much like I use the on and off court, the plus minus numbers, the advanced analytics to really look at Lindsay Allen and the way that she benefits the team, I got to be consistent and use that also to review Diamon DeShields. And unfortunately, other than the assist percentage, which goes up almost 4% when Diamon DeShields is on the court, and then still we get one extra still while she's on the court as well. Everything else for Diamon DeShields offensively is in the negative. We are an 11 point per game worst team with Diamon DeShields on the court offensively. The other team as well, they end up scoring much better points when they're on the court as well. When Diamon DeShields has not impacted the game offensively or defensively for the Chicago Sky team at all, really. And it's unfortunate because, like I said, I love Diamon DeShields. And she's had some big games for us, absolutely, but it just has not been at the level that we hoped it was going to be with her coming back to this team. And me and Steve were extremely hype on getting Diamon DeShields back to this team. Extremely hype. And it just has not been that at all. Like I said, 2 double-digit scoring nights for Diamon DeShields in her whole entire season so far. And unfortunately, because she was looked at as being the veteran, she was looked at as being some of the scoring punch for this team, and she's gotten passed up by Kennedy Carter, passed up by Angel Reese, rightfully so. There's no problem with that for those ladies. But Diamon DeShields' season is an F to me. It's the only F I'm going to give up. It's an absolute, it's unfortunate. And some of that, let me be clear here, this is not objective. These grades are subjective to my view, right? My view. And the view that I had and the hopes that I have for Diamon DeShields coming into the season, she hasn't lived up to any of them. She hasn't rebounded the ball well. She hasn't defended well. She hasn't scored well. Nothing. And almost at the point where Diamon DeShields, unfortunately, is almost borderline unplayable. Now, we still going to have to play her just because of the lack of depth that we have, but it's been bad. And I hate to say that. I hate to come here and use my platform to talk negatively about a player. I try to be a very optimistic guy in general, right? But this is bad. And unfortunately, Diamon DeShields is going to have to show and prove over this last half of the season that she deserves to stay in the WNBA. She just is. Like, I would not be surprised if Diamon DeShields does not get signed. When you look at all the influx of talent that's coming in, yes, we're getting an additional team, which opens up 12 more roster spots. So maybe that she does still make a roster based off that, and somebody wants to take a shot on her because we know what she can be. Keep in mind, the last year that Diamon DeShields did play in the WNBA, she did take off the 2023 season, but in the 2022 season, she still averaged 13 points per game. That was the third highest of her WNBA career. So it's like, where's the talent gone? And for some players, it does take a while to acclimate back. If you watch NBA or basketball in general, sometimes players that first year back from being out, it's kind of a throwaway year. And then they're able to kind of get back conditioning, things like that. And then they build off of that on the following season. And I hope that can be Diamon DeShields. She's only 29 years old, especially with how long into their late 30s the players are playing in the WNBA. She could still have a very long career ahead of her. But she's going to have to get it together, because I can absolutely see a world where Diamon DeShields is fighting to prove she deserves to stay on the WNBA roster. But you guys can let me know what you think on that one down below. All right, the last player that we're going to do for these player reviews before next episode, when we talk about Teresa Weatherspoon, is Brianna Turner. And Brianna Turner is another player that, theoretically brought something for the Chicago Sky, right? When you look at her former top 10, top 11 pick, something like that. But then you look at what she's brought to this team. And unfortunately, for my Bulls fans, they'll understand this. The ones that don't watch Bulls and just watch WNBA, they may not, but I'll explain it anyway. She's put up a Tony Snell stat line this whole season. Averages less than a point per game. 1.1 rebounds, 0.2 assists, 0.1 steals. Now, she's only averaging 6 minutes per game, and she's only played in 16 games so far this season out of the, if I'm not mistaken, Sky played 24 games this season, if I'm not mistaken. So, she hasn't played a whole hell of a lot. And I want to be clear on that, she hasn't. But her play hasn't dictated that either. There are usually two mindsets that fans have when they look at a player not playing. Some people look at it and say, well, they haven't been given an opportunity. How can they play better? My personal view is you got to play well to earn and show you deserve more minutes. To me, Brianna Turner hasn't shown that. Now, is there going to be a growing opportunity now with the roster changes? Possibly. And maybe she can start showing some of those things that you want to see from her. But much like Diamon DeShields, when Brianna Turner's on the court, everything gets worse. Everything gets worse. We are 17 points per game. We get outscored by 17 points per 100 possessions when Brianna Turner's on the court. That's just not good. Then you also look at our defensive rating. It goes in the toilet. But it raises by almost 32 points. Keep in mind, the defensive rating, the lower numbers, the better on it. So when your rating rises, that means you're actually getting worse. This team Brianna Turner has not impacted anything well in the game of basketball for the Chicago Sky. Now, again, advanced analytics, especially for a player that averages 6 minutes, can be very, very, very misleading. I want to be clear on that. So please don't take this as just a perfect indication of what Brianna can bring or her what she's overall brought this season, but it is just another data point to use in that case. And that data point don't look good. When you look at it, Brianna Turner is not part of any single positive rotation for the Chicago Sky at all. When Brianna Turner's on the court, the lineups that she's a part of either get outscored by 75 points, 69 points, 68 points, 50 points, 28 points, and 20 points. When Brianna Turner's on the court, the Chicago Sky are getting their ass kicked. Now, that could be because she only plays in garbage time. That's probably the case here. But those numbers are glaring, right? And so you hope, when I say that Michaela Onyenwere can do a lot with the opportunity that's given to her, but she's probably going to be a starter there, with Brianna Turner, you hope that something's going to turn around because, again, at being 28 years old, I believe Brianna Turner is, it's not looking good. It's just not looking good. And it's unfortunate because Brianna Turner is a player that like, you hope every player in your team is going to end up rounding out, right, and end up playing well for you. But Brianna Turner just hasn't given anything, any sign, any indication, any view, any stat. I go through these. The reason why I use advanced analytics so much is that I try to find one good angle to take so I could talk about everybody in a positive light in some route. There's no positive light when it comes to Brianna Turner. The advanced analytics are the advanced analytics. The stats are the stats. And hopefully, with an increased role, if she does earn that increased role, unless we're just going to be playing extremely small, or Isabel Harrison's going to be playing a lot more minutes the last few games of this season, Brianna Turner it ain't been good. It ain't been good. So, but that's my thought process. Those are my grades for this. We'll be getting into Teresa Weatherspoon on the next episode. Guys, make sure you guys sound off. Let me know how you guys feel on everything down below. We are 10 days away from Chicago Sky basketball being back. 10 days. Can't wait for it, man. Make sure you guys are following the show at Chicago Sky Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, ChicagoSkyCentral@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, which we're sharing it with Chicago Bull Central now. We may finish out the season sharing it with Chicago Bull Central, but the way you guys have been showing out for us, we're probably going to split it off into its own voicemail here soon, so be on the lookout for that. But you guys can send a voicemail, 773-270-2799. We're the number one spot for everything Chicago Sky related, but that's thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, see you guys next time we go to Skytown, y'all. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.